Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to talk to you about the idea of a cannon. Not a cannon with 3 ends. That's a very large gun and a piece of heavy artillery found on ships and battlefields throughout the early modern period. No. Today, I want to talk to you about a canon spelt C-A-N-O-N. This word is used to describe cultural works that have been highly valued by society. You'll sometimes hear people talk about a cultural canon or a Western canon. Now, lots of things can make up this cultural canon. Great works of literature, amazing pieces of music, deep philosophical writings, and beautiful works of art all combine to create this slightly nebulous idea of what a cultural canon is. Critics will often talk of canonical works of art as being examples of high culture. In contrast, there are lots of things that are thought of as being examples of low culture, perhaps more often referred to as popular or pop culture. Now, I want you to think on how TV programmes and movies try to convince us that someone is clever, civilised, or successful. They tend to use high cultural reference points. Now, like many people across the world, lots of you will have watched the Netflix series Cobra Kai. The villain in the most recent series is a chap called Terry Silver. Now, I'm not spoiling anything by saying that he's a baddie. However, he is a wealthy and successful baddie. When we first see him in the series, he's sitting at a piano playing a piece of music. The music is La Campanella by Franz Liszt. It's a beautiful piece. Now, I don't expect all of you to know who Liszt was. A few might be able to tell me that he was a composer. Fewer still might reference him as coming from the Romantic era. And some might know that he was Hungarian. And that's probably about it. However, when the screen villain on Cobra Kai plays a piece of Liszt's music, you know that that villain has done well in life. He's materially successful, and he isn't interested in trashy, popular culture. Instead, he's ascended to high culture. This happens repeatedly in our popular culture. James Bond is expected to know his wines. Food and drink are certainly a part of high culture. When Bond talks about a Dom Perignon 53 being superior to a Dom Perignon 55, we immediately think that he's an educated and sophisticated man. In the very scary film, The Silence of the Lambs, we see the serial killer, Dr. Hannibal Lecter, Hannibal the Cannibal, listening to Bach's Goldberg variations. And we just know that despite the fact he's in prison, he's still operating on a very sophisticated, civilised level. A lot about high culture and pop culture is associated with esteem, how we feel about particular pieces of art. Things that exist in the cultural canon, those pieces of high culture, are works that we hope represent who we are as a people. Some of you may remember back in April 2019, the Parisian Cathedral, Notre caught fire. This building was, and still is, an amazing example of 12th century French Gothic architecture. Now, some of you may know that Gothic refers to an architectural style that replaced Romanesque architecture sometime around the 12th century. Some may not. What you will all probably know is that Notre Dame is just beautiful, and we think it is beautiful. We've been told for centuries that churches and cathedrals that are Gothic are elegant and suitable to help people worship properly. They embody high culture, and they touch people's souls. Next time you're passing Wells, go and look at the Gothic cathedral there and tell me that it doesn't take your breath away. Or look at Bath Abbey down the hill, also Gothic, and see how that makes you feel. Notre Dame de Paris certainly speaks to the psyche of what it is to be French. A year after the fire, in the middle of the pandemic, they'd received over €1 billion in donations from the French people to repair it. There's been a lot about culture in the news of late, particularly around the BBC. The BBC is paid for by a licence fee, which costs £159 a year, or £13.13 a month. To watch a television in this country, you must have paid the licence fee. It is against the law to watch any TV in this country without paying for the BBC to exist. It applies to any device on which a live programme is viewed, so laptops, phones, tablets, and so on. In 2019, there were over 100,000 people convicted and fined for not paying their licence fee. The fee was introduced in 1946, when the only broadcaster in the whole UK was the BBC. Now though, the BBC is struggling to reach the whole population. A recent poll suggested that only 1 in 20 people between the ages of 18 and 30 watch any live BBC channels every day. This is compared to nearly half of the over 65s. Well, I suppose those episodes of Pointless aren't going to watch themselves. If that's the case, then presumably there are a fair few students at this school who rarely, if ever, watch live TV on the BBC. However, the BBC says that it does reach a lot of younger viewers, with it being the most used media brand for 16 to 34-year-olds, apparently reaching 80% of them per week, according to the BBC. Streaming has, though, changed the game, and younger people access good content wherever they can find it. Netflix, YouTube, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Disney Plus, and so on. The BBC is under attack from government though. A few weeks back, the Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, stated that the licence fee would be abolished in the coming years and that new models of funding would need to be found. That means either adverts or subscriptions, like you, or most probably your parents, pay for things like Netflix. The BBC is the oldest national broadcaster in the world and the largest broadcaster in the world. It is 100 years old this year. When it was established, the first person to run it, Lord Reith, stated that the BBC should exist to inform, educate, and entertain. Now, I want you to think about those 3 words: inform, educate, and entertain. Should television inform? The BBC is supposed to inform us. Perhaps the most obvious way that it does this is through the news. It has regular news bulletins on pretty much all its 10 national TV channels and 11 national radio stations. The news that it gives us is supposed to be unbiased. Now, that isn't a given. There are plenty of countries around the world where news channels are controlled by the governments of those countries. Unsurprisingly, they push the agenda of those governments. In other countries, news channels are controlled by big corporations, which can be controlled by directors or ultimately by one person. Fox News in the US was created by its owner, Rupert Murdoch, to appeal to a conservative audience, and it does. The BBC, though, is supposed to be unbiased. Many people think that it isn't, though. A poll back in 2018 reckoned that about 40% of the country thought the BBC was biased and presented a skewed version of the news. What was great about that poll, though, is that about half that 40% thought that the BBC was biased towards being very left-wing in its reporting, and the other half thought that it was biased towards being very right-wing in its reporting. So presumably it's getting it about right. It is at least trying to present news in an unbiased fashion, and that's got to be a good thing in an era of fake news and conspiracy theories everywhere. We don't always look to be educated by television. Most people love a David Attenborough documentary, and I'm sure you've all seen at least one in the last year. There are some great documentaries on other subscription services. Netflix, The Last Dance on the Chicago Bulls basketball team is amazing, for example. But the BBC's documentaries are equally fantastic. History, music, sport, lifestyle. The BBC has fab documentaries on all of these things, and they all manage to make you think. In recent times, though, the BBC has also been brilliant at educating us as a nation. Over the period of the pandemic, the BBC's bite-sized service was used by millions of young people. Every day during the 2021 lockdown, there were educational shows for children on CBBC and BBC Two. It educated the nation. Last week, CBBC was 20 years old. And when I think about how many episodes of Deadly 60 and Horrible Histories that equates to, all of which have educated us, it's a very good thing. So much of what we do now, though, revolves around entertainment, that third point of Lord Reith. I wager that a significant amount of the time you spend on the television, computer or tablet is spent being entertained. If you're honest with yourself, how many of you have spent time watching the news without being made to? How many of you have spent time watching a documentary without being made to? The easier thing to do is to be entertained, to watch something which helps us to escape a little, something which makes us laugh, something that makes us jump in fright, something that makes us feel good. We pay for that as well. There are fantastic programs on subscription services that are just great fun. I'm enjoying Reacher on Amazon Prime. I liked The Crown on Netflix. My whole family thought Cobra Kai was great fun and binged the entire 4th series over the Christmas break. All good examples of fun TV that's enjoyable, but is very much popular culture. It doesn't make your soul sing. The BBC does some bits of entertainment brilliantly. Line of Duty, Call the Midwife, and Strictly Come Dancing have all been BBC popular culture shows. However, the BBC isn't quite able to compete with the new kids on the block. Look at the production values of Ted Lasso on Apple TV, The Witcher on Netflix, or Loki on Disney+. These big subscription-based companies can churn out new, massive, impressive shows nearly every week. The BBC's income in 2021, mostly from the licence fee, remember, was a little over £5 billion. For that, it runs all those channels on TV and radio. Netflix has over 220 million subscribers and has a revenue of nearly $30 billion. So what should the BBC do? Well, I hope that it continues to inform and educate. The BBC News is amazing and relatively free from bias. I like being informed, particularly about the cricket, and the BBC's Test Match Special is one of the great radio institutions. The BBC should continue to educate and should let young people and old people enjoy decades more of wonderful natural history programmes or bedtime stories read by famous people. In terms of entertainment, though, I wonder if it shouldn't stop competing with the big players in terms of popular content. Let them break new ground and add new things to the cultural canon that is always growing. Perhaps what the BBC should do in terms of entertainment is to commit to sharing the great works of our culture with everyone. And that doesn't need to simply be endless concerts of Liszt or any other composer. It can equally be excellent shows like its version of Julia Donaldson's The Gruffalo, still on every Christmas, Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days, or Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials. It doesn't need to try and stay hip or down with the kids. Maybe it should be confident that as the oldest broadcaster in the world, it can stick to what it has always done well. Educate, inform, and entertain in a way that emphasises the quality of our cultural canon. Let's finish with a prayer. A prayer for all of us, including the BBC, who might from time to time feel under attack. It comes from the medieval mystic Julian of Norwich. Jesus did not say, "You will never have a rough journey. You will never be overstrained. You will never feel uncomfortable." But he did say, "You will never be overcome." I hope that you all, when the time comes, have a wonderful half-term break. Thank you.